Mm-hmm. All right, we're live. We're back. What's up, party people? This is Sunny Ray. It's the Sunny Ray Show. Today I'm with Andrew McLuhan. Did I say your last name right?
Sure, the H is kind of silent, but whatever.
McLuhan. Okay, cool. So Andrew, how you doing?
I'm very well. It's a sunny day. Perfect time to talk to Sunny Ray.
Yes, it is.
I will
Actually, I
say
should.
that the only reason I agreed to this was because your name is Sunny Ray.
You did say that. You did say that on a prior call, and I appreciate that. Yeah, it's thank you, Mom. So,
Yes, thank you, Mom.
Andrew, you're the grandson of Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian thinker who coined the medium is the message, right? The term that you everyone hears now. I wanted to ask you. So, do you want to just kick us off? Tell us a little bit about the McLuhan Institute, what you guys are up to there. We'll keep it to a couple paragraphs, and then I promise we'll come back to it near the end of the interview again.
Sure, a couple paragraphs is good. I was asked yesterday to do it in 2 sentences, and that was a bit of a stretch. Um, what we guys are, I mean, it's just me. I'm the McLuhan Institute, a grandson of Marcia McLuhan. There are a couple others. Shout out to my cousins. But yeah, what are we up to? A lot of reading, writing, trying to figure some things out, share these insights with the rest of the world in the hope that we can save us from ourselves.
What does the word courage mean to you?
Trying to make me cry on this beautiful day. Courage, you asked, so I'll tell you. I consider courage to be among my father's last words. My dad gave a speech the night before he died, and this was in Bogota in Colombia. And he had written a speech, and he went a little off script at the end. He'd made a couple handwritten notes, and the word courage was there. And the occasion of the speech was the opening of a PhD program in communication at the Universidad de la Sabana in Bogota. And I think he wanted to close with this word or idea of courage and having courage, specifically for them in South America, Latin America, opening a school of media ecology of communication, to have the courage to find their own way and not feel like they had to inherit anybody else's tradition. And I feel that applies to anybody starting something new, or trying to do something new, to have the courage, and it's much easier said than done. Courage is not for the faint of heart.
Does AI know courage?
Does AI know courage? Well, you need to back up a second and think about, what does AI know? I mean,
It knows a lot to some
well,
extent. I mean, it knows of it. Does it know how to exhibit
it
it?
recognizes the word
Hmm.
and how to use it in a sentence.
Hmm.
Does it have courage, the idea? I don't know. I think in order to have courage, you need to have something at stake, right? To just do something that doesn't have a positive or negative potential consequence, I don't think that entails courage. There has to be something on the line other than a string of words for there to be courage involved. And so does AI have courage? I'm not sure. That's an interesting question.
We'll leave that
Not a
one.
question I would ask the AI.
Yeah, right. So you grew up as a McLean, right? So when you were a kid, did you understand who your grandfather was, or was he just like grandpa?
Well, I was 2 when he died, so it was a few years later when I started to realize that people knew who my granddad was, and that was unusual, you know? Um, yeah, it's weird growing up under that kind of shadow. Shadow's not exactly the right word, although sometimes it can seem like a shadow. Uh, Sometimes it can seem like illumination, what's shining light on something, whether that's a sun or a moon or something else. Um, but yeah, growing up in McLuhan for me anyway, it's a little weird. My dad was a bit of a weird guy. Um, it's not normal to have an outsized organ of curiosity, you know? So
Mhm.
things tend to be weird, especially if you're cultivating the weirdness, which I highly recommend. But again, speaking of courage, it's not for the faint of heart. Uh, but it keeps things interesting if you like things interesting, and I suppose that I do.
And your dad Eric worked side by side with Marshall for almost 2 decades, right? So what was it like growing up in that house and with that kind of inheritance always like in the room?
Yeah. Um, it's I don't know if I can really speak to my dad's upbringing, except that you know he was a English professor's son, um, and my grandfather was an English professor his whole career, aside from his little side hustle in media. um, and it was a very conservative upbringing, and mid 20th century. Uh, my grandfather was a workaholic, like, his mind was
Mm.
always on, um, and, you know, maybe wasn't, an ov what we might consider a very present father. Uh, Not that he didn't love his kids, I'm sure. Um, but yeah, my father ended up working with his father, uh, which I think surprised everybody. Likewise, I ended up working with my dad, which I think surprised everybody, certainly myself. But the way I worked with my dad and the way he worked with his dad are very different. My father was a genius, like my grandfather. He went the whole PhD, MA, English literature, academia route, which I didn't. But because my father and grandfather both had that training, they operated on in a similar level. And I didn't go that route. Um, so the work I did with my dad was very different. I wish it would have been really cool if I'd had the same relationship as my father and his father did, but because my dad co-wrote a lot of things with Marshall, my grandfather. They were co-explorers, and I was really more of a shop assistant. And I've come to understand most of these things, I think, after my dad passed away. So it's a very different thing. But I think actually that's the valuable thing, because very, very few people are able to uh, operate on the level that they did. And so I really feel that if I can understand any of these things, anybody else can. So maybe there's hope.
So you were like before all of this, you were a poet, right? A photographer, a craftsman. What pulled you towards making things with your hands rather than ideas on pages?
Ah, um, I don't know. Um, I've just always been, I like building stuff. It's so satisfying, you know? Maybe not for everybody, but for me anyway. I'm building a treehouse right now, for my kids, and I built a treehouse in the same spot 20 or so years ago, when I didn't really know much about building things, and it was pretty crappy. So years later, after learning a lot about structure and how things hold together or don't, I decided to take a second crack at it, mainly because I didn't really feel safe having my kids up in that old crappy treehouse. So, so I rebuilt it last spring, and I've been finishing it now. And it's just, you know what, it's really satisfying personally to build something solid that you can trust in, and go from an idea to an actual thing. You know, it's a very appealing thing to me. It's a little different than poetry. Um, they have some things in common, but for me anyway, um, I used to say that writing a poem is almost the least poetic act, because really the art of poetry is in perception and in metaphor, in observing and seeing connections, and uh, it, you know, the one thing that AI is not so far good at, which is, you know, actual creativity, mental leaps of faith or metaphor, um, because you never know where it's going, right? It's not a matter of prediction or algorithmic assumptions. It's about discovery and novelty, and those are the kind of things that that get me going.
So you live near Bloomfield, right? So on what your youngest son calls the word farm, what does that life look like day to day away from cities and academia?
It looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I grew up in Toronto, in the city, and I'm glad that I did. Uh, I'm glad my kids get to grow up here, but at the same time, they're not learning how to live in a city, how to negotiate streets and neighborhoods and volumes of people and all that stuff, which is, I think, difficult to learn as a second language rather than as a formational kind of thing. But you know, I live between farms here, um, growing words. I make maple syrup in the spring. You know, I do farmy stuff, light little farmy stuff. I've got barns to try and take care of, and tree houses to build, and you know people. People know you, which is an interesting thing. The instinct is to say hi to somebody rather than ignore them. It's a very different thing. Of course, it's also, I call it Queen Street East East. It is sort of an extension of Toronto with a 2 hour commute between it these days. But there's an interesting thing, which is my wife is like seventh generation from this area. So we're very opposite in that way. Um, but I'm ruined, unfortunately. I couldn't live anywhere else happily. I love visiting other places, and I'm going to LA in a couple weeks, and I get down to San Francisco and New York and stuff. Um, and that's important to me. I find if I stay here too long, I get settled, and it's a wonderful thing. But for my work, I need to be unsettled. So a great way to unsettle yourself is to change your environment, and that'll do it. So the challenge for me is to unsettle myself and then come back and remain somewhat unsettled until I can get out there again. Uh, because the thing about my work, my family's work, is it depends on observation and recognizing change. And when you get, I'm using this word settled. I've never really spoken of it that way, but when you get used to something, you ignore uh, other things, right? Human perception is funny that way. We like comfort, but that's not so much helpful if you want to understand the nature of and the actual things that are changing around you, which I'm not claiming I'm having great success at, but I'm trying.
In 2009, you were asked to inventory, Marshall's personal annotated library. Can you walk me through that first day that you sat down with those books? Like what did you, I guess, find inside them, and what did you feel?
Yeah, that's where it began for me, really. Um, my grandfather was well, I have one of the books here. So, for example, this is Ezra Pound's ABC of Reading. And I opened a book just like this, and there's his name at the top there, H.M. McLuhan. Which, by the way, could you ask for better initials if you're a thinker? I don't think so. Right? Like, talk about nominative determinism, like HMM. It's ridiculous. I love that. But anyway, you open up a book like this and you start flipping through it, and he's got stuff underlined, and he's got things written in the margins, little notes. What does TOC mean? And actually, I just flipped past it, but I've got a note by my grandfather, and then there's a note in my dad's handwriting. Well, I flip to the end there, and then you see their indexing. I was like, oh, that's really cool. What's this? Oh, he circled page 81 and says antenna. What's that about? And here it says, artists are the antenna of the race, which is very, very, very important observation, which my grandfather spun out. It was one of his major themes that artists spend, perception is their business, expression. So they're always trying to experience new things and then express them to us in new ways. And because of that, they're attuned to changes in the environment in a way that we tend not to be. So that's why my family relies on the arts a lot for, being the sort of canary in the coal mine, as it were. So, and there were like 5,000 books in this library. Not all of them annotated like that. But when they're not annotated, that says something too. Maybe there's not really much worth noting about this or that work. And it quickly grew from a simple job of making an inventory of a library to really getting an entry into the intellectual life of somebody. Paula McDowell from NYU called it reading over McLuhan's shoulder. And it's like, I love that metaphor, through space and time, going back and seeing what's interesting to him or my father, and all sorts of other little subtleties and nuances, things tucked inside pages. And you realize, you rethink the book as a information storage and retrieval device, not simply as something you consume, right? But it's a very sophisticated thing that you can do a lot with, that you might not necessarily. They don't teach you that in school, I don't think. But anyway, that was kind of my entry. When I started doing things with my dad, he gave me this job, and I'm a little way further down that rabbit hole at this point.
So was there a single book, a single page even, where it just kind of clicked that this work was, far bigger than just your family, that, the world actually needed access to it?
Yeah, well, there was. One thing I was doing at the same time as making this inventory was, my dad had compiled, through many different sources, had been compiling a bibliography of all the works of Marshall McLuhan, every article, essay, book, interview, even, to put them all into one place. Still hasn't been finished, really. And as I was going along, if I pulled out a book and it had a reprint of a piece of Marshall's in it, I would go to the bibliography and make sure we had the data right, the name of the publication, the date, the page range type thing. So one day I found this book's From Source to Statement. And, when I was inventorying the library, I was making note of the book title, author, publication data. And then I would look at the table of contents and see if there was something of Marshall's in it, look to see if there's notes in it, that sort of thing. And in this book, From Source to Statement, there was a reprint of chapter 1 of Understanding Media. The medium is the message. And I flipped to the pages, and there was a note in pencil from my grandfather saying where he first said the medium is the message at a radio broadcasters conference at the University of British Columbia in 1958. And I was like, whoa, what? Because I hadn't considered that this famous phrase, of course, he would have said it somewhere for the first time. But that was, as far as I knew, unknown. And here it was in my grandfather's handwriting, his recollection of where he said it. And I was like, what? And that kind of set me on this quest, which I'm still on. Because early on in the life of the McLuhan Institute, I was trying to think of, what to focus on, because it's such a huge world. There's really more than I could ever do in my lifetime. So I wanted to focus. And something like the medium as a message is kind of low-hanging fruit, because it's out there. It's a very present thing. People have heard it, but few people understand it. And I think there's a huge opportunity there. So finding this thing set me on this quest to find not only the first time Marshall ever said it, but then the last time he ever said it, and all the different ways in between, because every time he said it a little bit differently, or expressed it, explained around it a little bit differently. And the easiest way to understand what he meant, but not only what he meant, all the possible meanings, including your own, which might be a little different, is to see all the different ways that he expressed it throughout the years in speaking, in writing, in books. So I started collecting all that. And I'm at the point now where I'm trying to publish a book about it. Because, I firmly believe that if people really understood that phrase, if they understood that, the content level of things is very surface, but how media actually change us individually and socially is through their form and their structure as they change the world around us and ourselves from inside out. That happens regardless of whether you and I are talking about what we're talking about, or talking about comics or cats, right? It's the structure of the surface itself that recreates us in the world. That medium is the actual message, the actual impact of a technology. And the content is kind of pales in comparison to the power of the form, right? Which isn't to say that content is unimportant. My grandfather was an English professor. He loved content, but he realized that it's not the content that changes the world. It's the structure of the technology. Does that make sense?
It does. I want to just double click a little bit. So YouTube didn't exist when your grandpa was here, right?
Right.
I mean, arguably the medium for most people's message, including this one. So can you just peel it back a bit? Like, so what I'm saying and you're saying doesn't matter, but the YouTube logo and the frame, and I don't know, like, how does that matter more than what you and I are saying?
Well, again, it's not that the content doesn't matter, but in terms of the effect of YouTube on us in the world, it's not the content that's having that effect, not the individual content or uses to which the thing is put, right? The fact that we have YouTube disrupts television, for one thing. The fact that you can stream live onto it disrupts networks, right? And this happens whether we're broadcasting, again, live about what we're talking about, or we could be talking about cats or chicken burgers or whatever, right? The personal and social consequences come from the form. So, for example, like the telephone, right? The telephone, the telegraph changed the world by their presence, not so much by the conversations that we're having, right? To be able to use a phone to call somebody rather than to send a letter that would take weeks to get there and come back, right? To use YouTube and all the things involved in it to have this conversation rather than my having to come to Toronto or you having to come out here, right? It's the structure and the form that have the major impact, that are responsible really for all the changes, rather than the individual uses to which they're put. But the paradox there is that content is what the thing runs on, right? Without content, there would be no structure. It's like the glue or the gas that runs the machine, but it's not the gas that gets that makes the change, right? It's the machine that gets you there. Um, he said the medium is what happens to you, and that is the message. And I think that's a little bit more to the point. He paraphrased T.S. Eliot in Understanding Media. He said, "Content is like the juicy piece of meat used by the burglar to distract the watchdog of the mind." And that to me is a lovely metaphor, because the content is what keeps you engaged, and what builds the actual machine, but it's the machine that restructures consciousness and the world around us. It's a difficult thing for us to grasp, because we're used to paying attention to the content, to the surface level of things, and that's important. But that's only accounts for about 10% of the impact of anything. In general, it's the service that reshapes us in the world.
Fascinating. You spent then like a close to a decade traveling with your dad as his assistant and student. So, what did Eric teach you that you couldn't have gotten from Marshall's books?
Mm. Well, you know, uh, my dad told me that it's the teacher's job to save the student's time. That is, a teacher who knows the territory can show you the shortcuts. You which isn't to say that you couldn't get there yourself, but a good teacher gets you there faster and saves you pain by the benefit of their experience, right? And really, the teacher should go further than sorry, the student should go further than the teacher by rights, which is a disturbing thought. But you know, the great thing my dad did, well, he did a few great things. One was not trying to make me get into this line of work. As if he had, I wouldn't have been interested. But he kept the flame alive all those years, even though it wasn't easy to do. But he sort of handed it off for me to keep going, and I suppose that's a pretty big deal.
Was there a moment where you stopped being Marshall and Eric's hire and started being Andrew McClellan, like with your own voice and your own work?
I mean, I think that's a continual struggle, because it's hard to not compare yourself to those who came before you. whether they're in your family or in your line of work. Um, it's you know, we're all our own people. We want our own identity. And for me anyway, I look at my father and grandfather, and I already said they were geniuses, and I really don't think of myself that way. And I'm not trying to say I'm dumb, but it's hard to feel, uh, you know, worthy. I guess is maybe a word. Um, but really, I think my strength is in my perspective and the way that I come at it from a poetic and slightly alternative way. And I could never be them. So really, that relieves a lot of the pressure. But honestly, the very difficult thing for me to come to terms with is that I wouldn't be here talking to you if my dad hadn't died that day in Colombia, right? That my grandfather dying, my father dying, kind of opened the way to me stepping into things in my own way, and that's a hard thing to reconcile because, of course, man, I wish my dad was here and I could ask him these questions because I have so many, um, and he knew the answers. But luckily for him, for me, for us, they left so much behind to show us the way and to save us time. So almost any question I have, really the answers are all around us.
You described where you are right now as mid-journey, right? Past building in stealth, cautiously stepping into the public. What does that next phase actually look like for the Institute?
Yeah, well, I I feel a little bit like a dragon sitting on a hoard of treasures, and I don't want to be a hoarder and keep all this stuff to myself. Its value is in the opposite of hoarding. Its value is in sharing. So I don't know what the reversal of that might be, but I want to be able to open these doors and let people come in, virtually and metaphorically, to see and to study, to explore, to share. And so that's really the next phase for me. I do see the McLuhan Institute as a startup, but it's a little different than how most people run startups. Because for one thing, I'm the third generation of this particular endeavor, and I don't have an exit strategy. There is, you know, um, I'm I'm looking to pass directorship of it, but it's a succession rather than an exit, which is a much different way to think about things. So what I've really been doing is trying to make it sustainable, self-sustainable, so that uh, it'll take care of itself for another couple of generations. And really, the thing that keeps me up at night is, I was lucky to have a few years of working with my dad to get a kind of lay of the land. And I think about if I were to die, after a speech or something tomorrow, would somebody be able to come in and pick up where I left off? And the answer is not very easily. So really, it's a big to do on my list of getting to that point where succession is more easily doable.
So you've said that you help founders see more clearly. What is it that founders typically can't see about the technology that they're building?
Yeah, well, one main thing is they tend to be focused on a few things like exit and product market fit, profitability, and these are all important things. But coming back to what we were discussing a little bit before, I'm not sure we got quite to the bottom of it. But these are very surface level things, and they don't really go to addressing what the economic effect is only one part of the effect of any technology. Uh, it can be a major effect, but you know the impacts are much more than economical. They have to do with psychology in the senses. They have to do with culture, education, identity. And what I try to do is help founders think outside these narrow perspectives of profitability and economy and exit, toward understanding more widely what the two things, the nature of the thing that they're building and the effects of the potential effects of the thing that they're building. Um, of course, not everybody cares about that, but I've found that a lot do, and actually increasingly, people care about their legacy. It's one thing I've learned from talking to older founders, the last generation of founders, people who created like Instagram and the iPhone and stuff, is a lot of them feel um, a very real amount of guilt for their part in creating things that have caused a lot of harm, you know. And a lot of these things, unintended consequences are not necessarily unforeseeable consequences. It just nobody decided to wonder what could happen, you know? And I think it's incumbent on us to do that. So I try, the whole point of my work in the McLuhan Institute is to be a bridge between what my family has discovered in the past, to be useful for people trying to understand the present and the future.
So Marshall and Eric gave us the laws of media, the four-part tetrad. For a founder in AI, Bitcoin, robotics, what does that toolkit let them see that they perhaps can't see right now?
Hmm. Well, I mean, the tetrad, these laws of media, are just four things that all technologies do. So it it lets you understand that every technology amplifies or extends something about us, like a real piece of us, hardware or software. It obsolesces or takes over from something else that is currently dominant, like YouTube displaced television, for example. It if you push it too far, it can tend to reverse its characteristics or become something quite different than was intended. And it also brings back an older way of doing things in a new form. These are just simply four things we know that all technologies do. And so if you're trying to understand um, what what it is that you're building and what it might do, having four places to start is well, it's a lot better than no place to start, and even better than one place. But again, it does kind of presume that you're interested in understanding more fully what you're doing, and really, smart founder will want to do that. Parts of these are actually in product market fit, enhance and obsolesce. What is this bringing to the table, and what is it pushing off the table, right? And they're actually, obsolescence. Just because something's pushed aside doesn't mean that it dies an instant death. In fact, it often creates a new area of opportunity that you can seek to fill. Um, it's one thing that if you're looking for opportunities, look at what technologies are coming on board and looking at what they'll displace, and that's somewhere, at least in the short term, you can work as people run away from it. you know, you understand that there's still some juice left to squeeze there. So, you know, it's just one framework, one way of getting at the nature and effects of any given technology.
Andrew, I know you don't have too much more time, so cut me off whenever you need to. But I got a few more. So
Okay.
Bitcoin is the new medium. As you know, I started India's first Bitcoin exchange in
Yeah.
2013. So money has always been one of the deepest, right, media we have. So how does the institute, like, what's the lens look at in terms of what, you know, Bitcoin is doing to humans, not just like to finance?
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure I've really thought about it. You mean Bitcoin in particular or cryptocurrency in general?
Bitcoin.
Okay. What makes Bitcoin different from Ethereum?
First to market, network effects. It does money and only money really well.
Okay.
It's truly decentralized. It's, in my view, the 0 to 1, right? Whereas Ethereum, by the way, I had a front row seat to seeing Vitalik write Ethereum because I'm from Toronto and I've been in the scene for a long time. In fact, just yesterday I emailed his father. So yeah, I think Ethereum is cool and it's interesting and it maybe solves for finance, but for me, money. You know, the thing that everyone gets into divorces over, the things that people get into wars over. I mean, the thing that nobody seems to understand, yet they spend their whole lives going to school and slaving over it. I'm infatuated with just trying to understand what that is. And to me, Bitcoin represents that, right? So that's why
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about it, but crypto's cute.
Crypto's cute. You know, Bitcoin is an interesting thing to me. The most interesting thing to me about it, frankly, is the mystery. Where did it come from?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that one. You're right.
And to me, this and it's interesting also that the symbol for Bitcoin is a gold coin with a B on it because
Mm-hmm.
gold has that impact about it, something that people go crazy over, right? The dragon sitting on top of the pile of gold coins and goblets and the rest of it. There's something very primordial about it. Um, but the mystery of Bitcoin, this Satoshi character, what is that about, right? To me,
Right.
that is very, very interesting. Uh, the origin story of it, and uh, oh man, I find that absolutely fascinating, as an element. That is it a CIA thing? Is it like some genius, mysterious Japanese person? Like, is it Russian like, what is it? Uh, the fact that if anybody knows, they're not telling, and that hasn't stood of the way of massive amounts of wealth being funneled through it is incredible to me. And I think there is a very, very, very big lesson there. Um, it's probably the subject for a whole other thing.
Yeah, right. That could be another. Like I said, I had a bunch more, but I know you got to run, man. Andrew, you're something else. Thank you so much for the time. I'm so happy. My mom named me Sunny Ray, and I'm even more happy that we have 31 people listening. You know, not bad. I love it. Thank you so much all for tuning in. And Andrew, let's do it again if you're up for it. I'd love to if you're up for it. I know you're a busy guy, but this has been too much fun and I love these type of conversations, right? That are counterintuitive, that are like, you got to just peel it back. And there's so much meaning behind the message. Maybe not.
I would love to. I'm
Yeah.
gonna make a condition though.
What is it?
I will do this again, but only if either you come here or I come there.
Oh, done. We're yeah, you're not that far from me.
No,
I
you're
would be
nearby. Bring the
delighted.
kids, hit the
Yes.
beach.
Oof. Be careful what you wish for.
Come
Yeah,
on.
these kids, they're dying for something like that. Cool.
No doubt.
Andrew, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to bring this one to an end. Just maybe hang back for 1 second and stream.